Thank you very much, Bianca. I know the connection was a bit choppy at the start, but I think what came across really is that you were mentioning 10,000 individuals that needs to be evacuated at some point, the need to respond, the need for early warning, but also one of the things towards the end that you were referencing is really how a city can make informed decision and really basing it on sound data, sound information, so that either you can preempt or also be able to respond effectively. Now moving on to another continent, and I'm really honored, and thank you very much, Mr. Zimande, for joining us from South Africa. C40 works with quite a number of cities in South Africa. We have Durban, Ekurhuleni, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Tshwane. And I know 3 of these cities very much are paying attention to managing urban heat or heat waves. But I don't know if the rest of our audience, if it's like a young crowd, you might recall that before the pandemic, Cape Town was almost reaching what they call day zero, which means at that point in time, there won't be no water supply to actually be made use by the community. And that means everyone, but of course, the ones who has no capacity to move or get access to water outside will be the ones left behind. So maybe just to share on your reflection from a national government perspective in terms of the efforts in South Africa, you know, what's the situation right now in terms of the impacts of climate change, and also how does it affect specific communities, especially as we mentioned, the more disadvantaged ones?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So in South Africa, we are facing 2 different kinds of impacts from climate change, flooding and drought. So we are experiencing both. So the western parts of the country is mainly experiencing drought, while the eastern parts of the country is experiencing flooding. So the city of Cape Town, as we mentioned, had a serious problem in the year 2020, and they were approaching day zero. In fact, we are a few weeks away from day zero. And if you can just imagine, I think almost everybody knows the city of Cape Town. It's a big tourist destination, and without water, that has serious impacts on the tourism industry. As much as Cape Town is out of the water, excuse the pun, the areas to the east of Cape Town are still experiencing drought events till this day. With areas like eThekwini, Durban, city of Tshwane, city of Ekurhuleni, flooding is the issue. So over the past 5-6 years, there have been annual flooding events, especially the city of eThekwini in the last year, 2022, they experienced the most devastating flood in terms of infrastructure damage, displacement of people, homelessness as a result of that. So we can say that we are experiencing more frequent disaster events across the whole country and across the spectrum of disaster, flooding and drought. On a national scale, the most appropriate action we've implemented is that we take the principle of prevention is better than cure. So mitigation is better than adaptation when it comes to climate change. And the best way we have identified so far is through ecosystem-based measures, natural-based adaptation, ecosystem-based adaptation, which then mitigates the impacts of climate change before they happen. So this has been seen in places like eThekwini, where they have an ecological restoration program, where they look at greening spaces to allow for the mitigation of adverse impacts from climate change to be realized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think our audience from Seoul could very much relate with that. And on the one hand, there was the heat wave that's being addressed, but then there was a typhoon coming in that was causing floods in some parts of the city. So you have to navigate through that. And of course, what you mentioned in terms of prevention is one of the key things. That needs to be addressed, even with the reality that climate impacts are happening right now. Now we'll move on to our next panel, and I think we heard the ambassador earlier that Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world. It ranks 7 in terms of just the vulnerability when we talk about climate impacts. So maybe Mr. Rahman, if you can share with us what are the things that the national government particularly are working on to be able to address this, while the impacts are already there, but really being able to respond to the needs of the communities.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bangladesh is one of the vulnerable countries of the climate change index. We have ranked 7th among the 170 countries in the world who are designated as climate change vulnerable countries. Every year we experienced one or another climate change negative impacts, such as droughts, cyclones, heavy rains, sometimes the salinity, nutrition and sea level rise. Actually, in the geological region, we are almost all the rivers the source the Himalayas. The glaciers of the Himalayas are melting down for actually the global temperature increases, so rivers are inundated, not to capture as much as water that are coming for the more glacier melting. About 13 cyclones from 1974, and it is more frequent from 2000 to 2020. We have experienced almost 8 cyclones, and also the drought rates. Another it has been resumed that at about 19% precipitation has been down in our country now, if I consider the 1992.